When hams talk about scanning, what do they mean? It's a common feature for most radios, and while it's not required to know, it can be a helpful tool for making new contacts. My name is Cody, W3AMG, and today I'll be giving you a brief overview of what scanning is, why you would want to do it, and how to start scanning today. Before we get started, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more informational ham radio content. With that said, let's get started. Now before we go ahead and get started, there's a few things I want to mention. So this radio is not a dedicated scanner. It's not going to do the same things as a scanner, and you'll be unhappy if you have that expectation. But the scanning feature is fantastic for doing some of the things we're going to demonstrate today. So let's go ahead and plug in our radio. So we'll plug in the programming cable to the radio. Make sure your radio is turned on as well. You've got it plugged in. Now we'll plug in the other side of our cable to the programming software over here on the computer. Awesome, just like that. So I have the CPS opened up, and from here I want to find the radio. So we're going to click on this COM port tool up here. There we go, COM3. Select that, and then we're going to read from the radio. You can do that by clicking the Read from Radio button. And I'm not going to bother saving this. Yep, Read from Radio. We're just going to do the other data today. Awesome, here we go. So we are all set. Now let's go to our zones real quick. So in the zones, I actually have the supercode plug installed in this radio, and we can see we have the NOAA weather channels. This is a perfect opportunity to use the scanning feature on this radio because there's not a lot of channels and you don't really have to go through them very fast. This radio is not a particularly fast scanner, so for stuff like this it's perfect, but you wouldn't want to have like a list of 100 channels that you're looking for short transmissions of information on. Not going to be fast enough for that. But for the NOAA weather channels, this is perfect. So let's use that as an example. It also is good for finding other ham radio groups. If you have a variety of repeaters in there that are all local to you, and there's not a lot of activity if you're kind of out in a smaller town and maybe you don't have it hooked up to DMR yet, which I would recommend, you can put those repeaters in there and scan through them. And it doesn't matter so much how fast it is, you're going to find out if there's activity. So let's go ahead and add these to a scan list. So if we go over to our scan list section, we can see we don't have any. Now you can create up to 250 individual scan lists, and then each scan list has a max of 50 channels in it. So we should be fine for this. So I'm going to find our NOAA weather stations real quick. There we go, awesome. So there they are. So just click on the one you want to add. Now if you don't have any channels, obviously you want to create some channels before you can add them to the scan list. So we're going to add these real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have our NOAA channels added. And there's a variety of other settings here in the scan list options, but we're just going to click OK and not worry about them for now. Perfect, so we have our first scan list created. Now you can also give it a name, so we'll open it back up here. So we'll give it NOAA weather, perfect, there we go. Awesome, so I have my scan list created. So now at this point, we could simply write this to the radio and we could definitely use that scan list, but there is another thing we might want to do to make it even easier to activate. So if we go to optional settings, you can actually change some more options if you go to VFO scan. I believe there's some options here, but we're not going to mess with that. We want to go to key function, and under key function, this is where we can actually make a shortcut button to activate the scan list. So we are going to choose P1 long key, which we can see here. That means we're going to actually have to hold the button down to turn it on, which I think would be perfect for scan. So let's go ahead and make this set to scan. So we'll find scan here, just like that, click OK, and now we are going to write to the radio. Write data complete. Awesome, so we'll get our radio unplugged here and ready. Let it boot up and let's try it out. Awesome, there we go. So the radio is back on. So let's go ahead and try it out. So typically I like to go to the actual zone of what I'm scanning. Now you don't have to have a zone for the item you're scanning, but typically from my experience it works better if you do. So whatever your scan list is, I like to have a zone of the same thing. So we have our channels here. Now let's go find our scan list. So if you click on menu, we can go down to scan, just like that. and you could turn scan on and off through this menu, but we programmed that shortcut so we won't actually have to now. So let's go down to the scan list. Regardless of that, you still will have to actually go select your scan list before the work. So let's click select scan list. So we're going to choose this one here, obviously our only one, and you want to click on it, and at this point you would have to scroll all the way down through all the channels to select it, which we don't want to do. So just click the up arrow and that will take you to the bottom, and that way you can easily select your current scan list. So we'll click that. Perfect, there we go. So we have our scan list selected. Now you do have to select it, but once you do, it will stay selected. So you don't have to keep reselecting it each time you turn it on and off. But if you want to change a scan list, you would have to do this. So let's back out and try out our new shortcut button. There we go. So we're going to hold down P1. Awesome, how cool is that? So we are now scanning the channels. Now we don't have good enough reception in here to actually be able to pick up a signal from them, but it's actively scanning, and when it hears activity on the channels, it will immediately stop and listen to it. This is perfect for the weather channels, especially if you're in the location and don't know which one is the right one, and you have kind of choppy conditions and may or may not be able to get a signal. This is perfect because it's going to keep scanning until you get one. You should now have a basic understanding of how to scan for active frequencies and receive more than one channel at a time. It's a fairly basic function, but can be really helpful if you're looking for new groups of users to listen to. If you have more questions about ham radio and scanning with your radio, feel free to submit a support ticket on our support site. You can find a link to our site in the description of this video. Thanks again for watching. My name is Cody, W3AMG 73.